Hello and welcome to this video, and on this video I am going to be doing the absolutely immoral task of pitting the two songwriters, Kate Bush and Joni Mitchell, against each other to see which one is the best, right? I am going to be using my superiometer to do this. If you want to know what my superiometer is, it is a machine I have created that measures different things based upon 10 parameters that you feed into it, and it decides who is the best on each of these 10 parameters, and then we get an overwhelming result which should tell us objectively who the greatest is out of these two mighty songwriters. As I'm filming this, it is actually Joni Mitchell's birthday today. She is 80 years old. I've just seen that on various social networks, and I thought, oh God, 80 years old, and I'm a massive fan of Joni Mitchell. She is perhaps my favourite American songwriter of all time, and my favourite British songwriter of all time is, of course, Kate Bush. These are my two favourite songwriters, and the thought of pitting them against each other I found so abhorrent that I started to question whether I should actually do this, whether it is right to do such a thing. I'm serious about this, and I thought because of that feeling I should do it to see what happens, and then I can have a discussion about the result. So I have fed into the superiometer 10 parameters, and I'm going to go through those parameters, and I'm going to discuss the findings of the superiometer. So first of all, I just need to tell the superiometer what we're doing. Superiometer, are you awake? Right, today I want to pit Kate Bush against Joni Mitchell. So could you load those two artists up into your extensive AI circuitry? Just wait while it does that. It takes a bit of time, superiometer, to get the older cogs moving. There we go. So there we have, they are in the superiometer. So let's start. So the first parameter, let's have a look, is musical composition. All right, this is the use of chord changes, arrangements, the use of technology. It's the musical part of the songwriting. If we take the great songwriter of our age, Bob Dylan, Bob Dylan's innovation was really to move the focus of rock and roll onto folk music and the blues, and especially the political and emotional content of that sort of music, creating a new type of songwriting where the singer was also the songwriter and would express their own view of the world. He did this in a way which democratized songwriting, because he put the lyrics first, and he in doing that allowed anybody to be able to get up and sing a song regardless of the quality of their voice. People like Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald, who didn't need to be one of those and just stand up and sing someone else's songs. This was this is the catalyst that creates rock music for me. Of these two artists, I would say Joni Mitchell is more influenced by Bob Dylan. But if we examine musically what's going on in Bob Dylan's compositions, the musical components have been pushed down to focus on the lyrical content. Now, I would say both of these artists take that idea of singing from the personal viewpoint of the world, but they are both brilliant musically. So the question is which one are we going to give the point to? Now, the superiometer has given the first point to Kate Bush. I think Joni Mitchell's great innovation was to take the wordiness of Bob Dylan and fuse it with the musicality of the songwriting style that had gone before, which is what we hear in like jazz standards, musical theatre type of compositions. The prettiness of that. She was able to create a vocal delivery that was once wordy and musical, right? And in doing that, she utilises incredible harmonic devices to do that. But in terms of instrumentation and arrangement, I don't think it's quite the equal of Kate Bush. although we are really arguing, you know, one brilliance against the other, I think Kate Bush is far more extensive in her use of musical devices. Whereas I often feel with Joni Mitchell, her songwriting, not always, but is often rooted in chords. Sometimes she writes on piano, sometimes she writes on guitar, she uses alternative tunings. But with Kate Bush, she seems to write from a totality of musical devices, whether it be chord progressions or whether it be like a sample on a Fairlight sequence, you know, a sampler or sequencer. So I think musically, the point just by a tad goes to Kate Bush. I personally find the musical aspects of Kate Bush more compelling than Joni Mitchell, but the musical aspects of Joni Mitchell are incredible, and I think that's down often to the incredible musicians that she used, which I think we'll be discussing later in this video. So that first point goes to Kate Bush. Right, the second aspect, which is the second big aspect, is the quality of the lyrics. Now, both of these artists are incredible in using their personal experience to describe an alternative view of the world. Kate Bush often uses a lot of symbolism to do this. She will often she's a bit like a chameleon in that she will take on characters to sing about certain positions. She will take on the character of, say, a poltergeist, for example, or she may take on the character of obviously Kathy from Wuthering Heights. She uses those sort of devices, which is really interesting. Joni Mitchell is far more interested in her own personal experience, to the point where it's almost painful. But within that, Joni Mitchell is able, in my mind, to bring in the great themes of existence. She will, in one song, move from the personal. She will use a lyric which is almost sounds like spoken word, and in the following lyrics she will be talking about time and space and metaphysical concepts. She will wrap that all in together. Her songs can tell a story in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. She could describe if you think of tunes like the Carousel tune, which one's that? I think it's called Carousel, where she really describes a person's life from birth to adulthood, and she manages to deliver that in a matter of minutes. Joni Mitchell's control over the lyrics is astonishing. I don't think there's anybody equal to Joni Mitchell in terms of lyrical quality in the last 50, 60 years. So I think that point definitely goes to Joni. The next one on the list is innovation. Now, as I've said, Joni Mitchell, there's a great innovation there. And I think there's two great innovations with Joni Mitchell. One is the ability to sing very wordy sentences that don't naturally fall into a sort of beautiful musical sound, you know. She's able to do that. She found a way of doing this, which I think is immensely influential. I think the songwriters that come in after her, people like, to some extent Paul Simon, James Taylor, these songwriters were utilising the innovation of Bob Dylan, but in a very musical way. And I think more than anybody else, Joni Mitchell's move from the sort of American folk movement towards using jazz musicians is absolutely groundbreaking. And her integration of virtuoso jazz musicians into her sound, I don't think anyone's done that as good as her. In a genius musician like Jaco Pastorius, I would say that she was able to elicit, in a way that like a character like Miles Davis would, his best performances. So I think in terms of innovation, Joni Mitchell is one of the great innovators of the 20th century musically. Kate Bush, coming in a later date, you could say that that Kate is not quite as innovative, but I don't think that's the case. Kate Bush comes on the scene as a teenager, right? And from day one, she's creating hit records which are absolutely incredible in their scope and musical achievements. And then she runs with this, exploring deeper and deeper into a lot of the technology that emerged in the 1980s, which for many artists was a noose around their neck. You know, all this sampling and, you know, DX7s and Fairlight, you know, and all that type of stuff. But what she does is it's absolutely profound. She's able to use that technology in the 80s probably better than anybody else. I can't think of anybody else. If you think of you know, a tune like Running Up That Hill, which has become such a huge tune for all of sort of mankind in a way, it's to this day is still touching people, and that is a tune that does not rely on chord changes and that usual type of structure. It relies on samples and innovations within the sort of musical content and instrumentation. Kate's an absolute genius of this, and she has done this to this day. So I think when it comes to innovation, and how many artists have been inspired, we're going to get to influence in a little bit, but how many artists have been inspired by what Kate Bush done? It's an incredible achievement. So I think the mark is split here between Kate and JONI, and that's what the superiometer is coming. So they get 0.5 points each for that one. Right, the next one is popularity, and this is a very easy one to do. You know, this is where we can actually get quite objective, because we can look at album sales and we can say, in terms of what the general public think, the general public like this artist more than the other artists. Now, a lot of people who watch this channel get really upset that I would class this, but for me, this is balanced by all the other parameters. So we just throwing in 10% of this is based upon going, what do the general public think? Because if there's a huge amount of people thinking that this is fantastic stuff, that surely must be an influence. Now, if we look at the record sales for Kate Bush, we're coming in at 7 million, just under 7 million record sales. And if we look at the record sales for JONI Mitchell, she's coming in at 7 million record sales. I find this fascinating, and I'm glad that they are both equal in terms of popularity, because we can also split that mark. So we get 0.5 points for popularity. Now, for a singer-songwriter, we could also throw into the mix vocal virtuosity. Both of these singers are absolutely incredible. If we take JONI Mitchell, for example, she is influenced by the great jazz singers that she grew up with, people like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan, and especially the vocal group like the Beverly Sisters, those sort of groups which really utilise vocals. She has that in her system. If you watch the Shadows and Lights video, she actually scat sings through I think it's a Charlie Mingus composition. It's an incredible display of vocal virtuosity, right? But also Kate Bush came to fame with an absolutely incredible voice, which is so beautiful and yet so able to bend, right? Kate Bush, unlike JONI Mitchell, sings in a number of different voices. She's able to take on different characters. In terms of vocal dexterity, she seems to have an incredible range, an incredible ability, like JONI, to sing really strange interval and you know, and harmonic structures. You know, barely, you know, out of her teens, she has a #1 here in the UK with Wuthering Heights, which employs all sorts of strange harmonies, you know, major scale based harmonies, and employs an incredible range. You know, Kate Bush will sing extremely low and extremely high. And I think if we grab all that together, and I think the X factors for me is so many people I know love JONI Mitchell's voice, but so many people don't. There's so many people say, I really don't want to get into JONI, but I find their voice really piercing and shrill. Now, I think that is part of her greatness, because it allows us to focus on the lyrics to some extent. But with the Kate Bush, if you listen to her vocal performance on, say, This Woman's Work, vocally, it is just one of the great vocal performances. For me, Kate Bush, just as a singer, is up there with your Chaka Khan's and your Whitney Houstons. She is an absolute virtuoso singer. and she does not sacrifice her own personal vocal sound for virtuosity, which so many great singers do. So I think the point here slips over just about to Kate Bush, so we have 1 point to Kate. The next one is instrumental virtuosity. What are they like as musicians? Kate Bush, of course, is an accomplished pianist. She plays piano on a lot of her early recordings, and she seems to have a good command of that instrument, whereas JONI plays a number of instruments, mainly guitar and piano, but all sorts of other strings instruments and percussion instruments. Her guitar style rightly placed her in the Rolling Stone 250 greatest guitarists. So her ability to pick very intricate folk guitar parts and her use of altered tuning places her in the great pantheon of instrumentalists. So whereas Kate, for me, is in the great pantheon of singers, JONI Mitchell is in the great pantheon of instrumentalists. She is up there, and I think anyone putting together a top 50 greatest guitarists of all time could well put her in that list. So I think the point here for this one goes to JONI Mitchell. Right, so the next one is influence. So this is related to innovation, right? I think that if we look to artists out there that sound like JONI Mitchell, it's hard to think of artists that sound where you could hear a direct influence of JONI Mitchell. Maybe this is because she's uncopyable, but you would think that Kate Bush was uncopyable as well. And yet, you know, artists like Tori Amos, you know, there's a whole host of artists that have come in after Kate Bush that seem to mark it, like Bjork, for example. If you take someone like Bjork or Tori Amos, that type of singer-songwriter, the utilisation of technology, the sort of harmonic bass, the instrumentation, the approach to songwriting seems to come directly from Kate Bush. Now, people over in the US might find this decision a bit hard to take, and I think this is a contentious one. But I think in terms of influence, it has to go to JONI, doesn't it? It has to go to JONI. Each of these points are on a split like this. I think it has to go to JONI, because I think although we can see specific influences in specific artists that seem to go directly to Kate Bush, I think JONI Mitchell's influence on popular music as a whole is profound. Absolutely profound. She was part of a circle of American songwriters, people like Graham Nash, you know, and a whole host of other artists, Neil Young, all those sort of songwriters. She was within that circle, and she was held, I think, in regard as being the greatest of that circle, influencing those songwriters. So I think in terms of influence, the point has to go to JONI Mitchell. And I think part of that is also the fact that she's just been around for longer, and she was around at a time when music was more influential anyway. So the next one on the list is the ability to perform. You know, to be able to get up on stage and do a James Brown or a Prince or a Madonna. You know, some artists are great because they can deliver the song. Now, I think obviously, in terms of the actual image, the actual look of each artist, and also the way they perform on stage, this point without doubt goes to Kate Bush. This is one of her great innovations. Her stage show that she went out in 78, 79 in the UK, no one had ever seen that before. You know, I mean, Kate Bush, to pull off what she wanted, had to get a coat hanger and wire it around her ear and stick a microphone on, inventing that type of clip-on, you know, vocal mic. That is how influential Kate Bush is in terms of performance. Her use of sort of stage and theatrics can be seen in virtually absolutely every modern artist, popular artist. You know, before Kate Bush, I mean, of course, she's not the sole innovator of this. We can think of a Parliament Funkadelic coming down from UFOs, and we can think of, Black Sabbath with their big, you know, Stonehenge sets and all these types of things that have happened before. But I think in terms of performance, this undoubtedly goes to Kate Bush, and I think her specific way of telling the story of the song on stage, which in the end almost drove her to breaking point. She never toured again after that tour. It was so difficult to pull off what she had in her head. I think, without a doubt, the mark here goes to Kate. This is one of the few cut and dry decisions on this list. Right, so let's move on to the actual musicians, the virtuosity of the music you're listening to, the quality of the musicians. Now, both of these artists, being so great, were able to access an incredible array of musicians on their album. If we look at Kate Bush, we can see contributions from musicians like Eberhard Weber, incredible use of very talented session musicians. But I think Joni Mitchell almost like defines the use of virtuosity within a songwriter context, which is a very difficult thing to do. Eliciting, as I said before, some of the best performance ever from musicians of the quality of Michael Brecker or Pat Metheny or Jaco Pastorius or Tom Scott. You know, the whole host of jazz virtuosity. Her ability to do this was spotted by one of the greatest composers of the 20th century, which was Charlie Mingus, who wanted her to explore her compositions, which she does incredibly on the Mingus album. Anyone who's watched the Shadows and Lights video will see an expression of virtuosity which is unparalleled in the realm of songwriting. But I was also influenced by the film Wild Things Run Free, that video. Is that the right title? Because I think that's it's the band that features Vinnie Colaiuta on drums. This is a rocking out there band, and Vinnie's input into that band was so virtuous. At this point, without doubt, I think goes to Joni Mitchell in terms of the utilisation of virtuosity and the musicality of the performances contained within her albums. So many musicians go to albums like Hejira, not for the songwriting, but to listen to not just the virtuosity, but the innovation of the playing on that album. And it is entirely down to the way Joni Mitchell utilises the musicians. Joni Mitchell was famous for saying that she couldn't really have a bass player on her albums because a bass player would root her chords. And so often the harmonic devices she's using, things like sus chords, are ambiguous. She wants the harmony to not do the thing that harmony does in a jazz standard, which is to elicit the same emotion in the lyrical content, this is a really difficult thing to do, is where, that sort of Cole Porter thing where he says, the move from major to minor, and you hear that in the tune. But Joni Mitchell goes beyond that into this ambiguous moral realm harmonically, and to root her chords would, as she said, driven a picket fence through her composition. So her utilisation of Jaco Pastorius, a bass that's able to fluidly and melodically move through her compositions, is really one of the great musical achievements of the 1970s. So, it goes to Joni Mitchell. So we are now down to the 10th parameter, the last parameter, and this is where it gets all subjective, and it comes down to my personal taste. And I have wrestled with this, but the truth is, I have every single Kate Bush album, bar I think the most recent one, which I have on download. But in terms of physical copies, I think all the other albums. I think I've lost my copy of Red Shoes, which isn't a bad thing because it's perhaps. I'm not going to say that. Okay, Red Shoes is a brilliant album, but in terms of if you want to know what I think, go and check out my ranking of Kate Bush's albums. But which has changed since then as well. I need to do that one again. I'm going to have to go back to some of my ranking videos because doing this channel and talking, look at the comments, you start to change your opinion, which I think, in terms of art and music, is a very positive thing, right? So I have all the albums pretty much by Kate Bush. I own probably 5 albums by Joni Mitchell, and I do love Joni Mitchell. I've also got both of the performance DVDs, the Shadows of Light and the Wild Things Run Free, if that's what it's called. I don't feel like that's the title of that video. Anyway, My knowledge of what Kate Bush has done is far superior to what Joni Mitchell has done, because I have been obsessed with Kate Bush for about 30 years, without a doubt. I think, even though I love Joni Mitchell so much, it goes to Kate Bush. But both of these artists, if I had to, steal away a number of records and I was only allowed 2 songwriter type records, it would be Joni and Kate. I do think they're the 2 best, which is why I wanted to do this. So the point, anyway, in terms of my personal taste, goes to Kate Bush. So, Superiometer, can we have the results of this exploration into the greatness of these 2 artists, please? Oh, I'm so frightened to hear this one. Let's have a look. Oh, yes! Bizarrely and strangely, they are tied. Kate Bush is now objectively as good as Joni Mitchell, and Joni Mitchell is just as great as Kate Bush. Isn't that a result? That's like, oh my, it's almost like it's the result I wanted to happen, isn't it? It's an incredible thing, isn't it, that that has happened on this video. So upset was so many people when I rated Eric Clapton. Well, I didn't do it, it was a Superiometer, but I obviously communicated the news that Eric Clapton, it was greater than Jeff Beck. Even though I love Jeff Beck way more, I was objective enough to be able to say, I think in terms of what guitar players and what they've done as a whole, it's Eric Clapton. I was able to step outside my own personal likes, which I think is an incredible thing about art. There's a thing about art, and if you want to really know why I'm doing this, it is because, A, on the one side, art allows us to change our opinion. If we can change our opinion, then it makes the world a better place. If you can do it with the arts, if you can open yourself up to somebody else's point of view and go, I agree with that, which is basically what happens when you like someone's piece of art, that is an incredible thing, right? But on the other side, if you're able to go, it's not what I like, but I actually think artistically that artist is more important and greater than what I like. That ability to see the worth of something else, those 2 things together are really powerful things. And this is why this discussion is important. So if you've got to the end of this video, right, the Superiometer does not exist, right? It is a conceit I have created to be able to have the discussion, and that is why I have the discussion. And the reason why I'm telling you this, and I know it's going to shock a lot of people, right? The next video I'm going to be talking about Father Christmas. So if you don't like this, you can switch off right now. But if I'm telling you now on this video, and the reason is because although the Superiometer is a bit of fun, when I considered measuring these 2 artists, there was something about it I found profoundly wrong. It's profoundly wrong to compare artists, because you're trying to compare 2 worldviews, right? Two people's experience of what the world is around them and their ability to convey that to us. And when we start dealing with greatness, it's obviously the case that both these artists are incredible at conveying their own personal vision to the listener. And to then at that point, how can you possibly then compare that? How can you? It's like comparing a flower to the sky. It's not possible. But the point is the nature of art is to have the discussion. In that there is a worth, which I'm hoping is why you clicked on this video. The reason you clicked on this video is not because you wanted to know the results. You clicked on this video because you wanted to know what I thought. Okay, and I've then created a conceit where I pretend some other devices. Now, whether this video is the death of the Superiometer, whether I've had enough of this and I move on, I don't know. We'll see in the comments. But this is a conceit. It's a device that I have used to have a particular discussion, which I think is worthwhile. It is fun and it is a laugh, but it's also very, very serious. This is serious stuff. So, if you like what I do here, then pop a like on it. If you want to see some more of what I do, you could subscribe to the channel. Now, these things are what make the channel work. So if you're sat here watching my videos and you're not pressing those two things, it's not going to hurt you to do it, right? And if, you know, in a month's time you hate every video that's popping up in stream, you could always go and unsubscribe. You know, some people have been known to do it. It is your personal choice, but it will help me immensely. That is the first transaction that you could do to help me if you want to help me to do this. We now live in this transactional place digitally, and this is really interesting because as AI takes over, we no longer have any jobs. It is these sorts of transactions that might save the day. So if you can do a little transaction for me, and in other words, pay me with your appreciation by liking what I do, then press those buttons and ring the notification bell or whatever you have to do. If you love what I do, you could become a patron, and the link is down there, as I always say, and on there you'll get a whole host of things. It's not just more video. Go over and have a check out and see what's going on over there. There's lots of fun going on there. But if you're a busy person, you know that you would like to see more but you haven't got the time, but you want to support me in what I do, I am sat here in the winter. I have now a nice lovely little heater in the corner of the room, bought with my YouTube tip jar money. The link is down below. I have also registered for Zoom, so I can now have long form conversations also paid for by the YouTube contributions. So you're going to be seeing some really long, detailed, rambling interviews with all sorts of incredible musicians. We've got a video coming out with the great guitarist Martin Miller soon. I've also done an interview with an incredible YouTuber called JCM Led Zepp Storage, who I discovered who was actually accurate in what he was saying in terms of Led Zeppelin history. He's probably one of the best guys I've seen, and I told him that, and he said, well, I'd love to interview you, and that there's an interview out of me talking to him, which is quite good, and a documentary about my time in the Priory of Brian, Robert Plant's Priory of Brian, over on his channel, JCM Led Zepp Story. So I'm giving a shout out to him. I think I'm done now, so I hope you liked this video. If you did, I've just done all that. I keep doing, I've got into this trap of doing that twice now. Oh God, it's becoming like second nature. Right, see you soon.